All right, let's jump right in and deconstruct the design philosophy of a pretty unique kind of content creator, one that deliberately swims against the current of what the algorithms usually reward. So it all starts with this question, right? It's a paradox that you see everywhere today. On one hand, you've got data showing that, in the long run, things are getting better in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, our feeds are just flooded with stories of failure, of injustice, of people getting the short end of the stick. How can both of those things be true at the same time? And this leads us right into our first big idea, this really confusing contradiction. You've got this belief in progress clashing with a constant downpour of negativity. The whole philosophy of the Ig Nobel Prize channel is basically built to try and make sense of this tension. So their starting point, their fundamental assumption, is optimistic, but it's not a blind optimism. The idea is that, as a whole, humanity is moving forward, and that logical, rational thinking tends to win out eventually. Now, that's a pretty big departure from all the doom and gloom you usually find online. Okay, so if things are generally getting better, what's with all the bad news? Well, the answer isn't that the world is secretly falling apart. Instead, these stories are the friction, the glitches, the little breakdowns that are almost guaranteed to happen when our societies and our technologies just get more and more complex. Think of them less as signs of decay and more like the growing pains of progress. So whenever we run into one of these stories, one of these systemic hiccups, we basically have two choices, two paths we can go down. One is fueled by fear, and the other is built on understanding. Let's dig into that. And this is where things get really fascinating. Look at the contrast here. On the left, you've got the typical online media playbook. The goal? To crank up fear and anger. How? By exaggerating and oversimplifying things to trigger you emotionally, because that's what the algorithm loves. The result is a totally warped, low-res picture of the world. But the Ig Nobel approach on the right, it's the complete opposite. The goal is to help you understand the structure of the problem. It breaks things down, looks for the real cause and effect, and it's all driven by plain old intellectual curiosity. The result is an outrage. It's that, so that's how that works. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It's the key difference. See, conspiracy theories take a super complex problem and pin it all on one single evil person or group. This method is the exact inverse. It takes a complex problem and carefully unpacks the system that created it. This brings us to the absolute heart of this whole way of thinking, what's called the no mastermind philosophy. And honestly, it's a really powerful lens for looking at the world. Here's the crucial idea. Problems almost never come up from some evil genius pulling the strings in the background. Instead, they pop up in what's called the design reality gap. That's just the unavoidable space between how a system is supposed to work on paper and how it actually works out here in the messy, chaotic real world. And there's a clear step-by-step process for finding this gap. First, you just observe something happening. Then you break it down into all its little pieces. Next, you carefully follow the chain of events, what caused what to happen. And finally, you can pinpoint the exact place where the original plan went off the rails or created a side effect nobody saw coming. That's the gap. So how do you take this philosophy and turn it into actual content week after week? Well, it's all about building something that's less like an encyclopedia and much more like a map. Yeah, the goal here isn't to create some final, definitive encyclopedia that has all the answers. Not at all. It's about building a living, breathing map of knowledge. Every video is just another case study, another pin on the map, and they all use the exact same analytical toolkit. It's meant to be a work in progress, something that can be added to and corrected over time. And their specific strategies totally support this map-building idea. Covering a huge range of topics, that shows these systemic gaps aren't just in tech or politics, they're everywhere. Releasing in multiple languages, that frames these as universal human problems, not just one country's issue. And the two-part format is brilliant. First, here's the story, then here's how we thought about it, which leaves you, the viewer, room to do your own thinking. But, choosing to do things this way, well, it comes at a price. It means making a very conscious, very deliberate trade-off, giving up one thing to get something you think is more valuable. So what's the trade-off? Well, on the one hand, what you lose is pretty obvious. You lose out on that crazy, explosive viral growth you get from feeding the algorithm. You lose the viewers who are just looking for a quick emotional hit. But what you gain, what you get in return, is so much more valuable. You get the deep, long-term trust of your audience. You build a community of viewers who are thoughtful and resilient. And maybe most importantly, you get to be totally consistent in your philosophy and what you create. So the whole point here is that you have to completely redefine what success even means. From this point of view, slow growth isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's the planned result of a successful strategy that values a high-trust relationship with its audience way more than some fleeting short-term buzz. And all of this leaves us with one final, big question for you. In this world of infinite information, every single thing we watch or read adds another little detail to our own mental map of reality. So, what kind of content are you using to build yours?